Well, for everybody around the table, thanks for being here tonight. My name is Cliff Berg. I'm the Vice President of Council Operations, and we've got Jamie Pyle, who's chaired the workshop team that actually put this recruitment tool together. And thank you for those of you who are on the phone. Wayne, we appreciate you being. We know what kind of haul it is from Virginia, so I didn't expect to see you. So. But we thank you for being on the phone. The purpose of this workshop tonight is sort of almost train the trainers a little bit, but also to acquaint you with the tools that this workshop team put together in terms of volunteer recruitment. And the reason why it's important is that this council has been very fortunate and will show 6 years of membership growth this year, which is phenomenal. That's the good news. The bad news, or the not so good news, is that we've lost adult volunteer leadership, and as in a decline. And at some point, I think you all can realize that if we don't have enough adult volunteers, we're not going to be able to support that increase in membership and all the programming that goes along with that and everything else. So it has become a real priority for the Delmarva Council to take a look at volunteer recruitment and to take a proactive stance in terms of helping volunteers recruit other volunteers. And also, I think for our staff, I think it's a good reminder of how to do things as well. We've got some people from districts. We've got some people from units. So we'll try to have the presentation maybe address a little of each in terms of what's in the content. There is a website which we'll refer to earlier that's in the information that you received that you can refer to as well. Jamie, I think you have some comments that you want to make as well. So.
Yep, thank you, Cliff. So the council, as Cliff said, realized that we were having great membership growth, but we're lacking volunteers, and volunteers are going down. And so council wanted to get some volunteers together to see what we could do to help solve this problem that we have, not only probably in our council, but also nationwide. This is a trend. So back in the spring, with the help of 4 or 5 volunteers from around the council and the professional staff, we started sitting down to develop from scratch, because this was not something that we took off of national website or anything, develop from scratch the kind of 5 key things that we feel that are priorities for when to go out in order to recruit volunteers properly in order to make your units or districts strong and so they can prosper and ultimately help the boys and scouts in our program. So we sat down throughout the spring and summer, developed this workshop and developed this training along with this guidebook in order to roll out to units and districts in order to help units and districts be able to run volunteer in order to recruit volunteers better. So this is the kind of the very end of that workshop, and I hope you guys all enjoy it.
Jamie and I are going to split up the presentation tonight, and he referred to sort of 5 areas or the cycle of recruiting. And some of this is very intuitive and maybe not news to you or new to you, but I think in terms of packaging this, I think it does a good job of doing that and reminding all of us of the steps that we need to take to do the right type of recruiting for both our districts as well as our units. And for that matter, even on a council level, a lot of this applies to as well. And Wayne, if you're taking a look at the leadership book or the PowerPoint, we're looking at the volunteer recruitment cycle. And there's really 5 key steps: prospecting, making the ask, onboarding, mentorship, and succession planning. And we'll attempt to set guidelines and go over each of these as we go along. I'm going to talk first of all about prospecting, and on a unit level, I think first of all, just looking around at who you have in your unit, whether that be a scout troop or a cub pack or a venturing crew or whatever, and look at the resources that you have with the parents that have kids and young people in the program. And also taking a look at the applications. The adult applications have a lot of information on them in terms of what people do for a living, hobbies that they might have, and that might stir some thought to you about how you might use that individual in terms of being active on a volunteer level. I think also if you're a scout troop and you're looking at leadership, volunteer leadership there, it's also looking at who's transitioning out of the Cub Pack from a parent point of view. And if you don't have a good relationship with the Cub Pack that you're sort of getting most of your kids from, you need to do that, because a lot of those parents do have some interest in continuing on some basis, perhaps with a troop committee or assistant scoutmaster or transportation, or some way help the scout troop out. So trying to keep track of parents who are transitioning out and might have some interest in maintaining their in helping out. Find out who new parents that will be around for a while. That's basically looking at the Cub Scout or Scout that first comes into the unit, talking to those parents that are new to the program, and talking to them about how the troop is organized, how it's run. I think it's almost like setting an expectation that they're expected to help in some way or another. I don't think it's a forcing situation, but I think it's just an expectation that if you put it in general terms of like, our parents really help us out with our program, and here's some of the ways that they do it, and we'd love an opportunity to talk to you about how you might be of help to you. Looking at what the skill set that is required for the actual position. How many times we go up to somebody and say, "Boy, we'd love for you to volunteer and be on the troop committee." Well, yeah, well, what is it you want me to do? And what is the position? And sometimes we also recruit to a committee as opposed to recruiting for a specific job. And I know there's a lot of studies been done with the new generation of millennials particularly, that they're interested in helping perhaps, but they're not interested necessarily being on a committee or a long-term commitment, but they'll do a once-and-done job. And there's lots of once-and-done jobs in units, and for that matter, even on a district level, that we can take a look at. Conducting a parent survey. I don't think I was associated with my son's scout troop. I don't know that we ever did a survey. We have plenty of help, but I think it's a great idea. On the website, there is a survey that you can use, and parents are probably used to filling out something in terms of other organizations that they belong to, so why not conduct a survey? Another tool that's available, I'm not sure where it's housed in the council, but for districts particularly, there is an Eagle Scout directory. It's a couple of years old now at this point, that National published. I know the council has it. I'm not sure where it's housed. Maybe Brian DeBisi has it. I'm not positive. And again, looking at that and seeing what Eagle Scouts are actually in your community, and maybe having some type of get together with them and just acquaint them with what's going on with scouting, in your community, and going from there. So there's a couple of ideas in terms of prospecting, and I'm sure, and if we have it at the end, maybe we'll be able to share some ideas that all of you have in terms of how you get your volunteers as well. So now we identify somebody, we identify a prospect, we got to make the ask. And I think maybe that's the hardest thing for people to do. It's one thing to ask for money. It's also another thing to ask for people to volunteer, because you're asking them to give up their time. But you need to do that. And the first thing we ought to do is prepare ourselves so that we know something about the actual role that we're asking that person to take in terms of the position, but also trying to find out as much as we can about the individual who we're trying to recruit. Where do they work? If we can find out from a survey what their interests are, their son's name, talk to them about their scouting background, if they have any, why did they bring their son, or maybe in the future their young lady, into the program. So getting some information as far as that's concerned. And then also trying to find somebody that knows them. a lot of times we can identify a name, but can we associate somebody that knows them that can help us set up the meeting to actually make that ask? And that's obviously a lot easier than me making a cold call to somebody and saying, I'd like to come over, or can we meet to talk about something doing with the scout troop? Trying to find a neutral place to meet is good, a restaurant, coffee house, but do it at the convenient time for the person that you're trying to recruit. And then they make the ask. Spending time to get to know the prospect, gauge whether or not you think the answer is good. You may not get a direct answer right away, so you set up a time for maybe a follow-up or answer any questions that they may have. If you get a yes, that's great. And then you make sure you follow up with them on a very timely basis. You get position descriptions put together, and also having, I know we're going to talk about mentorship in a few minutes here, but you have somebody that works with them and so forth. If they say no, that's where it's a little subjective. You've got to sort of say, are they really saying no, or are they saying no to what you've asked them to do, but maybe they have some interest in helping in some way? So can you turn the conversation to something else? So I would go with maybe a list of things that as a fallback position, so that if something sparks from the conversation that takes place and you get a no on the first thing that you're really after, then maybe you got a fallback position to try to at least get them involved somehow. If it's an absolute no, there's never such thing as a no. You keep communicating with that individual and try to keep them involved, at least from a communication point of view, and let them know what's going on. And then maybe that job comes up that is that specific item that you need some help with, that maybe they can frame that around a specific time frame as far as that work that they need to do, and then you ask them to do that and try to get them involved with that. So again, I think we need to think about not only long-term commitments for volunteer, like a scoutmaster, or assistant scoutmaster, or committee chairperson, or a cub master, or den leader, but also short-term action on things that we need to get volunteers to help with. Because as you all know, we probably all got involved because we helped out a little bit, and then all of a sudden, that hour a week became a couple hours, whatever it was. And speaking of that, make sure you give a realistic viewpoint about what kind of time it's going to take. We laugh about it, but I think it's important that you try to give a person a realistic idea of the time frame. So, Jamie.
Okay. Do we want to stop here, Cliff, for questions?
Yeah. Can we put Wayne back?
He's on.
Wayne, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, after being muted, I'm leaving.
Oh. Okay.
No.
Okay.
So far, it seems pretty straightforward. I don't have any particular questions. I would underline what you just said about making the ask. Don't just ask without having a specific purpose.
Yeah.
And also the time frame. That's the biggest thing nowadays is people's time, and they just don't give it freely. You've got to give them a really good reason to commit.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, I know that from experience and time in the council that I know you folks in Virginia a lot of times are sort of operating on your own and with not a lot of staff support and sometimes in your history, and you guys just keep plugging along. We're very grateful for all that you guys do, and so thanks for being on the call as long as you could. And I'll be down to visit you.
About leaving.
Oh, I thought you were leaving. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on now. Get with it, man. It's a program.
Okay, I thought I heard you say that. I'm sorry. I
did say that, but I was just teasing.
Oh, okay. A little
but you're right
Virginia
about the long-term thing. Here in Virginia, I would say the average scoutmaster's age is well over 50. And that's a problem. We got people on our district committee whose boys were Eagle Scouts 25 years ago.
John Crockett. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about succession planning, and hopefully that'll stir some conversations within some of your units down there to start really seriously taking a look at that issue. So I'm going to let Jamie move on with onboarding, and we'll go from there. So.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. So now that you've prospected and you found the right person, you've made the ask, as Cliff talked about, and they said yes, hooray for that. What comes next? In order for the new leader to be successful, the onboarding process must be done and done well. So as you look at the slide, we have 7 points that we feel are key points in order for the onboarding to be successful for the new volunteer in their role. Number 1 is explain the role and responsibilities fully. As we talked about before, we want to make sure that as we're recruiting this volunteer, that we explain what the job is, what the responsibilities are, so that the new leader can understand the position better and be ready for what him or she are about to undertake. Next up is make sure that leader has the training that's required. Not only is the training required for the person, but it also helps him or her feel more confident in the role. It also gives others a good feeling knowing that the person has training in what they're about to undertake in their new position. Number 3, announce the new leader's role. Communicating to the unit who the new leader will be is important for everyone so they can get used to the idea of a new person in that role. This should be done as soon as possible after the new leader has said yes. It is important for the smooth transfer of roles that everyone is aware and prepared for the change. Encourage shadowing. Experience is something that can't be taught or learned from a book or in a classroom. Having the person take on a small role or job can show them that they can be successful, and it is a great motivating tool for that new leader as they're moving into the new position. Conduct a transition ceremony. This is my favorite part of onboarding. Make the transfer of the position meaningful and something to be proud of by holding a formal ceremony, maybe at a court of honor, a PAC meeting, or the annual district dinner. This will allow everyone in the unit to see the new leader in that official role, and it'll make the experience memorable for all parties involved. Giving a small gift or token to the new leader is also important. This makes the new person feel that they are part of something special, and it'll be more meaningful to them. An example of this, and this happened to me, is the outgoing Scoutmaster had his Scoutmaster patch on his uniform, and as we were up in front and he was talking about me and what was going to happen, he reached over, grabbed the Scoutmaster patch, ripped it off his uniform, and handed it to me and said, "Do this patch well." So I was very happy to, 4 years later, when I passed the Scoutmaster role on to the new Scoutmaster, I carried on that tradition. But again, just something very simple, something small, make it a big deal for the unit to something to celebrate. Create a list of priorities. An action item list will provide the new leader a starting point and to ensure that things don't get missed during the transition. Meet key volunteers and staff. Have the new leader meet either district or council staff and allow that leader to make contacts so that if they have any questions that come up pertaining to the new job, they'll have a contact that they can reach out to if there's no one in their unit that they feel can answer that question. If the onboarding process is handled correctly, and the new leader will feel welcomed and prepared for the new role they're about to take on. So onboarding is kind of describing the person, they're starting a new role, they are in it, they've just started. Up next is we don't want to just leave that person and say, "Hey man, my hands are done, I've handed off the position, I'm out the door." A very important part coming up is mentorship. So mentorship, or as you see on the slide, one-on-one coaching and support. Mentoring is defined as the guidance provided by an experienced person. Mentorship is a period during which a person receives guidance from a mentor. Notice the words guidance and period. As a mentor, it is important to determine the best method to provide guidance to your mentee, plus realistic transition timeframes. The purpose of a mentor is to ensure a leader's position is handed over effectively to the next leader. This is an important part of the process because it takes the mystery out of what the role entails and provides effective teamwork during the transition period. So number 1, Share and review documentation. Having clearly listed directions or procedures, noting who is the point of contact, best demonstrated practices, and what worked well in the past or needed improvement. This will help the leader as they move forward into the position. The leader that is leaving their position should set the right expectations regarding the role and document all of their responsibilities. Again, getting back to the point where just letting the person know what the job is so they're not caught off guard later on. Review annual calendar together. Having a binder or folder or some other type of documents with notes organized by event and activity and providing contact information is often helpful. This gives the new leader a starting point in order to jump off of when they're helping to plan or get something done. Ensure the calendar is provided to the mentee so time commitments will not be a surprise to them. Be encouraging and patient with the new leader. Keep the lines of communication open while working together and with the unit or district. We recommend that the new leader take on the role with the prior leader stepping back. This allows everyone, including scouts and other volunteers, the opportunity to work with the new leader and grow accustomed to them in that role. Show enthusiasm and sense of fun and purpose for the position. Let them know that they can do the job better than you did, and encourage them to try new or different things within the role to keep things fresh. Offer praise for the job that they are doing. And last but surely not least under mentorship is define the mentorship duration. Check in with the new leader on a regular basis and agree upon the best method of communication, whether it be by text, email, or telephone call. If you can, have at least a year of mentoring and partnership between the outgoing and incoming leader. This will allow you to attend meetings together, prepare as a team, and review how things went after an event or task. So those are the 4 things for mentorship that the committee kind of came up with what we thought was important. So I'd like to take a quick break here and pause for the group, whether you're live or on the telephone call, and see if anyone has any questions about onboarding or mentorship that they'd like to ask.
So I have kind of a question, comment.
Sure.
Some guidance on this. So what I find is when you bring people on, I've come on to new troops recently, and everybody does things differently, right? We all have our own way of doing things. I find that what I'm seeing now, a lot of the how you do it differently is not being embraced. People want it to be done the same way as it's always been done, even though you're meeting the same intent, right? We're all here for the boys, we're meeting the program, but we all, I may do things differently than you, right? At some point, my guess is we need to embrace change and the way people do things differently, as long as they're not hurting the kids or hurting the program or hurting the unit. Is that a fair assumption? I mean, is that something through this mentorship that we would talk with?
Yeah, and I think that would be a great expectation when you introduce this new person to the committee, whether it's district or unit level, and talk about, just put it out in the open that, hey, this person may do things different than I did, and that's okay. We want change. We want the unit or district to grow and to be better. And if we keep things stagnant, we may not get that growth that we're looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that can also happen on the district level as well, where some of our districts, I'm sure, have long-term, long-tenured scouters on them, and they've done a great job for many, many years. And introducing somebody new to that group, and maybe they're new advancement chairman, for example, and they want to handle it somewhat, still accomplish the same thing that needs to be done, but do it a different way. Sometimes we don't welcome that, and I think that's unfortunately, I think that's sometimes true of scouting, that it becomes a good old boys club to some degree, and we need to really try to avoid that, so to speak, and welcome new people in. Otherwise, we're going to have a situation where people all of a sudden are going to want to, they die or they leave or whatever, they move, and then all of a sudden we're stuck and we don't have anybody in that position. So it's hard sometimes to make changes after you've done things for years a certain way, and but it also can be very discouraging to a new volunteer if they come in and they want to try a new idea or have and they're constantly hitting their head against the wall, so to speak, and they're going to say, why am I here? So we've got to be open, no question about it.
I think one challenge that I have on the district level, at least, is going back to the first thing, a prospect, and finding that pool. Because once you get on the district level, I think that's why a lot of district people are there a long time, because finding that talent pool, you're isolated from the talent pool of the kids that are, or the adults that are involved with the units. I find the only way to meet them is to attend the roundtable or events. And it's tough to even get some time and find out who it is. You have to go many times to find out who are the consistent ones that might eventually age out and be interested in continuing on the district level. So I think the district ones have a hard time getting to the first.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that in some ways, at least you have a pool of parents to work with as the new kids come into the unit, and
right.
That gives you at least a pool of people to work with. Whereas a district, first of all, you can still look at parents that are transitioning out and may not want to get involved with the next unit, and a lot of that's how I'm sure some of our district people were there at some point in time where their sons transitioned out of the program, and then they stayed active as a volunteer, as a scouter, and somebody asked them to do something on the district level. I think my guess is that from a prospecting point, as far as districts are concerned, you're looking at other pools. For example, I know in Salisbury, for example, you have 3 Rotary clubs. So is there somebody on the district committee or somebody that you know that belongs to one or more, one of those Rotary clubs where you can make a presentation and then maybe ask, again, have a specific job to have them get involved with. So maybe they're not on the district committee, but they're doing a job that the district committee needs to have done, at least get some interest started. I think I brought up the Eagle Scout directory. I think that's a viable tool, and many councils have used that to try to, particularly for unit commissioners. They've used it for unit commissioners and also then district committees. Because unit commissioner is an interesting position. It's commitment, but you can almost do it on your own time schedule. As long as you make your unit visitations and you record your unit visitations, and perhaps you go to a district commissioner, meeting, it's pretty much it's pretty flexible in terms of, and there's some training that you have to do, but as far as it's not like a week in, week out type of thing. So a lot of times an Eagle Scout who's not involved now, that might be a good place to get them, involved, so to speak, as a unit commissioner, particularly if it's in their community and they can help with that. So.
And Cliff, if I may, unit commissioners, speaking about finding the talent pool and connecting district operations to the units, unit commissioners can be a great tool for that. If a unit commissioner has great relationships with units in the community, they'll probably start to know the parents and the individuals that are stepping up at a unit level, and they can bring that information back to the district commissioner, to the nominating chairperson, or the district chair for prospecting as well.
I think even if you have strong sponsoring institutions, that there's another source or pool that you can go to if they have a strong charter partnership relationship with the council and with their units that they have, and they have a love for scouting and it's, they love the program. I think sometimes going to that congregation or that Lions Club or that, whatever it might be, that civic group, and asking for their help. And again, I think our expectation is that we want them to be on the committee, but I think we got to start looking at it. This is personal opinion. I think we got to start taking a look at breaking down the job to specific actions that need to be done and ask an individual to do that. And then hopefully they do a good job. It does 2 things. First of all, you can evaluate how they do. Number 2, it tells them about the district. And then number three, hopefully, if they like doing it, maybe ask them to take a larger role at some point. So it's sort of a training opportunity as well. I know it's a lot easier talking about it than it is doing it. There's no question about that. But it takes a real concerted effort, which gets into our succession planning, which is the last step here. And on a unit basis, I think the key thing here is don't wait till it's time to recharter. It should really be an active conversation almost at every committee meeting, or at least quarterly or something, where you sit down and you evaluate the jobs that are being done by the troop committee or the Cub Pack committee, and looking at what parents might be transitioning out, where we're going to need help. Here we got these activities coming up. Where is there an opportunity to get a new parent involved that maybe is not involved? So doing that on a regular basis, as opposed to waiting till recharting time and all of a sudden we need 5 den leaders and a cub master. It's scramble time. So starting early and obviously trying to keep your eye on the ball. This is probably the hardest thing, I think, is reevaluating leadership roles yearly. And Wayne, it's interesting that you brought up about seasoned scoutmasters, because there's a two-edged sword here. Because if you read this thing, it says we ought to reevaluate the leadership role and sort of have a conversation about how long they might be in that position and their tenure and what are their expectations in terms of staying on. But if you got a seasoned scouter, you might insult them. They might think you're suggesting that they want to leave. So you got to have some diplomacy here, I think, in terms of how you approach that. It's a lot easier on perhaps on a Cub Pack basis, because those people turn over 2 to 3 years. But with a scout troop, you can have seasoned scoutmasters that have been there for, my son had one for 40 years. And the good news was they had him for 40 years. The bad news was they had him for 40 years, because as soon as he left, moved to Annapolis, the scout troop went right down the tubes. And so, which is unfortunate, but, and then he had a good committee and everything else. So you got to handle that with some diplomacy, but maybe somehow, Wayne, I don't know, maybe you have those seasoned scoutmasters get together at what I used to call the square table instead of the round table. In other words, they were folks that have been around for a long time, and you have a candid conversation with them about your concern that you guys are doing a great job, and we want you to stay on, and we love the fact that you're doing the job that you're doing, but we are a little concerned about succession planning in terms of what happens and what are your plans if, in fact, something happens to you. I mean, we're all getting up in age. We don't know what our destiny is, whether you might get moved out of town for a job situation. And just be open with them about it, but maybe meeting with them as a group as opposed to a one-on-one situation and just talking about the issue. That would be a suggestion, perhaps, that you might use. I don't know.
Well, speaking of the long-term thing, we find that the round table is the least threatening venue to discuss things like that.
Okay.
And the more you talk about it, the more people interact, and sometimes it sinks in, hey, they may be talking about me. What am I doing to plan for my successor? But we haven't gone to him and said it's time to get out.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying.
And to give you an example of not exactly that, but today, I had a scout knock on my door to sell popcorn. And I told him what I wanted, and I gave him the money, and he turned around and left. And I said, you didn't write down my name. Do you know who I am? He says, yes, sir. I see you at Round Table about 3 times a year. So it's really good to have the scouters participate in Round Table.
Yeah.
It gives them some idea of what's coming down the pike or may come down the pike for them. It also gives them some ownership in what's happening in the district. And our leadership seems to be very amenable to that.
Great. Well, the other thing, it's interesting that there's a last point here that I want to talk about this is communicating, because if there's nothing worse about, I have an idea of somebody who might take a position and somebody else has the same person in mind, but for another position, and we don't communicate with each other, and all of a sudden that person's being asked by two people to do two different things. So communication is obviously important, both at the unit level as well as the district level, in terms of if you've identified a prospect to share that and what's your idea in terms of how to, and you may find that through the conversation that maybe that person's better off in the role that the other person is thinking about rather than what you're thinking about, because maybe they know them better, they know what their hobbies, what their interests are, or whatever. So we would just encourage you to communicate. Jamie, do you want to add anything as far as what we've talked about, or?
No. So as I said before, this was something that the volunteers and the professional staff kind of developed over the course of 5 or 6 months through the spring and summer. It's by no means a complete document. We kind of did it with the thought of we would revisit it, and if we need to make changes to it, we're happy to do that. So as people are doing it and as people are listening to this training, if they find something that either doesn't work when they go out to use this in the unit, or they think that we could change this or make this better, please get back to us. Let us know your feedback so that we can make changes, because we really do want this on the professional, in Delmarva Council, from the professional staff and from the volunteers who ultimately this affects. We want this to be successful and useful to our units.
Yeah, I just, again, I think it's in your, the leadership guidebook, and it's also on the email that you got with your invitation. There were 2 links there, one for the PowerPoint presentation, but the other one was for the actual guidebook. And in that guidebook is a website, www.dmvc.org, volunteer. And there's lots of resources in there in terms of some podcasts, parent surveys, position descriptions. I love what you said, tips and tricks. I don't know what tips and tricks is, but anyway, some tips on how to recruit, maybe some ideas on where you might. Jamie and I and Justin did not leave you with some call for action here. And what I would encourage, and Jamie and Justin, you can add into if I missed the point here, but number one, take away what you've learned tonight. Hopefully you've learned some things or been reminded of some things, and start using it, and share this with your other volunteers, whether that be at the unit level or at the district level. Maybe it's some time at a district committee meeting that you actually, in fact, talk about it and have it on the agenda about prospecting, what needs we have, where can we use some people, where might we find those people, and that type of thing, and be open for new people to come in with new ideas too, and maybe having a candid conversation that if we do recruit some people that we'd be open to what they have to say. I got to tell you, and I guess this is the former professional scouter in me for 5 years when I first got out of college, but your district executives cannot do all of this. The expectation is that you as volunteers, or we as volunteers, need to be a staff partner with them in terms of making this recruitment happen. Now, can that district executive perhaps go with us as a resource if it's a key position and you're trying to recruit them? Can they visit a charter partner head of the institution if you've got difficulty with a unit position and perhaps trying to build that relationship? Well, sure they can. But for us to expect that district executive or any of our staff to go out and do all of that recruiting, it's just not going to happen. There's only so many of them, and they only have so much time. And so we really need to take on that role a lot stronger than sometimes that we do, I think, quite frankly. And I know we all, well, some of us still work, but you know, we all have other things that we're doing, and besides scouting. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for all you do for scouting, number one, and number two, hopefully you'll take away some ideas that you got tonight. Jamie, do you want to add anything, or?
No, Cliff, I think you said it. We want this to go back to the units, for the units to use it and put it into action so that they are finding their next leaders for the next generation of kids that are coming in. So,
Cliff, the flip side, if I may.
Yep.
I know everything you did because Stuart and Leanne recruited me for the job. They did a very decent job of letting me take the hook. Okay, so the question I've been in the position now for 8 months, something like that, and I'm weighing the strengths and weaknesses of my committee. I've got some good volunteers, but I have some that I don't want to upset, but they're not doing their job. 30-year background and 55 years in scouting as a youth up. I've seen a lot, and I don't want to have the military attitude of how my committee is functioning. So I got a couple of them that I need them, but I need them in other positions. But I'm trying tactfully to talk to them. So I'm looking for, I can't, if I'm sitting as commanding officer like I had been, I mean, I can handle that, no problem. You're doing this, that, done. But we're volunteers, and I don't want to run them off. But I've got a couple that are in it for the wrong reason. I got a couple that are, you tell them, you're doing the job, right? And then you look and go behind them, and no, they're not doing the job. I mean, that's terrible to do. Yet I've got another person who wants the job badly that I know effectively would do the job.
So together?
So I'm hurting for, Stuart will tell you, I'm hurting. I'm worse than Swiss cheese in Sussex District. I mean, I went out and recruited a roundtable commissioner for the Boy Scout side. He's doing extremely well because I used the tact that you used here. He came up with his son in Cub Scouting. He's a teacher at Selbyville Middle School. Ideal person. I said, you're not alone. I'm here. Even though I don't own Roundtable, I support it. And I go, and we have a roundtable discussion. But now I'm having issues with some of my staff that are not doing the job. So, and I got other people that want that position. And I don't want to run the other ones off.
That's an interesting suggestion. It's an interesting situation.
It's like a reverse thing here.
Yeah, at some point in time, in any organization, whether it's a district committee or even if it's a unit committee or the council executive committee or council board, for example, and I think the first thing is setting expectations and accountability. And I know that's, again, easier said than done, but I think if it's laid down on the table and in such a way that, if you're unable to handle the job, please let us know, because kids will suffer eventually, or somebody will suffer if it's not done, and we can get you help if you need help, and that's when you try to bring in another person and maybe sort of work with them. At some point, this sounds like heresy almost, but I've had to fire volunteers.
I love it. I love what you're saying.
And it's not an easy task, but usually I've done it, and I've had another position or something else for them to do, and I've couched that. So I've said, Ray, I think, you've been the advancement chairman for many, many years. We appreciate all of that. We'd really like to bring somebody in that has a great interest in that. And what we'd like you to do is perhaps take on the role of X and make sure it's something that they can succeed in, because if they have success there, then you'll hold on to them. And I don't mean this, please take this the right way. If they decide that they're going to leave, maybe it's best in the long run that, in fact,
I hold
that
the
they
door
do
open
that.
for them myself.
Well, you hope that doesn't happen, and you hope, that people at least remain a friend of scouting, but you try to give them every opportunity, perhaps to take another role on, or to give them the help that they need to be successful in that role.
Exactly.
And you talk about succession planning at your district committee meeting. The fact is, we need to be changing these roles over every 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it is. And because we need to get new people involved, and, we're not all going to be here forever. So I don't know if that helps or not.
No, the takeaway is good. It's exactly what I want to do. But I want to do it as tactfully as I can and have that person have another job, but in the meantime, mentor the new person as well.
Yep.
Change is good.
On behalf of the professional staff, wanted to really thank Jamie for his leadership in the development of this workshop, and Cliff, thank you for helping us launch this with
It's a nice presentation.
everybody here tonight. A couple things. One is, first and foremost, the professional staff of the Delmarva Council, whether it's the field staff, the support staff, the development staff, our program team. We are all on board with supporting this initiative. We recently had an all-staff meeting where we covered some of these themes with the professional staff. Everyone across the table was motivated and inspired to support each of you and the folks in the districts in helping us roll this out. As Jamie mentioned before, it is absolutely essential, and Cliff, I think you mentioned it before too, that this doesn't stay with this group, that we find every opportunity to roll this out with the district folks who benefit from it, and especially with units that we know where maybe they're struggling with these skills and have some of the questions that we talked about here tonight. There are a couple things in the short term that we have to support this project. One of them is the website that Cliff you mentioned before, dmbc.org/volunteer. On the website, we've got the volunteer recruitment guidebook, which is the full-fledged, page-by-page, bullet point by bullet point walkthrough of this cycle. We've also got the PowerPoint version, which is condensed, and it's built for a presentation where you can use the guidebook as your backup if you're the presenter. In addition to that, tonight's meeting, whether you know it or not, has been recorded. And we actually are going to be able to post this to our website, to this dmbc.org/volunteer, so that volunteers can access it from across the council, across the country. We've got a couple other things in there that are built to help you guide that conversation. One is the Parent Talent Survey. I can't speak enough about how great that thing is. Jim Prettyman was the one that introduced us to that Parent Talent Survey, and that is a key part of that prospecting component of the workshop. We've also got volunteer position descriptions that are going to be posted to the website, so that if you're struggling to get a sense of, well, how do I really phrase it to this person, what we're looking for here, you've got a place to start. Now, you will have to customize it based on your own units or district's needs, but it's a good place for you to start. And then lastly on here, we've actually got a couple podcasts from our national office. So if you have someone who does a lot of driving, it's a great opportunity. I've listened to both of them. They're actually really great quality podcasts that the national office puts out. The first one happens to be on cultivating volunteers, and the second one is on succession planning, so really relevant to what we're talking about here tonight. And the last piece that's in here is if your unit or district would like someone to guide you through the volunteer recruitment workshop, please reach out to your district commissioner or district executive, and everyone's contact information is in there. If you are in a district leadership role, or if you are a member of the Delmarva field staff, your contact information is on there. So any volunteer should be able to reach out and learn how they can receive this training. Just the last piece from the pro staff, the folks that we have on the training tonight, the folks sitting around the room, Wayne on the call, we are going to look to you all as leaders, as we often do, to make sure that this information reaches the people that it needs to reach out in the districts. If there are other people that you know of who would benefit from this and can turn around and help become a facilitator, that is what we're looking for, so we can make this thing become as viral as possible, so we can empower as many volunteers as possible to learn this information and to spread it wherever it needs to go across the council. I can't stress enough that last component about it being viral. There is no specific national training associated with this. This was built right here in the Delmarva Council. So I say that to say there's no specific certifications that a volunteer might need to be able to use these tools and help a unit or a district or a volunteer benefit from it. That's important for all of you to know as well.
Justin, I would be remiss if I have three of the district chairs that I'm working with as district council operations vice president, and I know I've had conversations with the three of you as well as the Chop Tank about I would like to get around to visit your district committee, and I'm not there as a spy or whatever, but as a resource for you. And if there is something specifically that you would like me to address to your group, I'd be more than happy to do that. Some of you I know better than others. I know in Tri-County, because I've been going to events and that kind of stuff, I know many of the folks there, but in the other districts I'm not that familiar with. So, but sometimes you can use me as the person who brings up the topic that you don't really want to bring up too. And so, and I'm more than happy to play whatever role you want, but I'm not there to spy. I'm just there as a resource. I'm going to come and observe and try to be of help to you and your key three, actually, in terms of working with your key three and making sure that your district operation is working the way you want it to. So that's a new role for the council, and Brian Tomey's doing it for the northern districts, so he will be working with the 4 districts up that way. So he'd be the contact individual for up there. So I'll be in touch. We're getting into soon be the holiday season, so I'm probably looking at January to make most of my visits between at that point in time. So, but I'll call you before I come to make sure you're okay with me coming and
come anytime.
See if you want me to play a specific role. Okay, fine. And Wayne, I'll probably be in January in Virginia. Okay.
That sounds good, but I'd be remiss not to say any of you that are not doing anything this weekend, as STEM Camporee for Area 3 is going to be absolutely fantastic. And the planning that's gone into this is laid out one of the best things I've seen in scouting in a long time. As of early today, we had almost 200 people registered. So
great. Where is it going to be at Wallops?
It's going to be at the KOA campground on Chincoteague, and the boys will be split into 2 groups. Half, well, it depends on how many there are, but anyway, half will go to Assateague to the Wildlife Center and be on the island for part of the morning, And then in the afternoon, they'll go to Wallops, to the information center, and other places down there. They're getting to climb the lighthouse, which is the highest point on the eastern shore. So.
Great. Well, sounds like it's going to be a great event. So, and I want to thank you again for being on the call tonight. So.
Hey, I got to go now because the wind's blowing down here, and you know how telephone reception is in the wind.
I know. Okay. Thanks again. Here.
Okay, night.
Jamie, anything? Well, again, thanks everybody for, we promised you an hour, and I think we stayed to that. So have a safe trip home.